Man, the jitters never go away, do they? Alright, let's do this. What's up? What's up, everyone? Betty Dots here. I know it's been a long time. I'm really sorry about that, but I'm back. I've been moving things around, as you can see. A little bit of a new setup going on. But I'm back here because a new Guilty Gear Strive character came out, Testament. And, you know, we love Testament. We love our MB representation in the game. We love the they-them nation taking over Arc System Works. I think it's very exciting. Obviously, Testament came out a while ago, but, you know, in a way, Testament's birthday was yesterday now, so we're celebrating Testament's birthday by analyzing their theme. What we do in this channel with every single character of Season 1, we've done a thorough analysis of what's going on musically with each one of the themes, try to like maybe learn something from it, learn some new music theory concepts. As a music teacher, I'm a big enjoyer of video game music, I'm a big enjoyer of fighting game music, so I'm very excited to see what Daisuke and Naoto came up with for this new theme. So what we're gonna do, the way that this works, if you haven't seen the other videos, if you haven't, maybe check them out. But if you haven't seen the other videos, what we usually do is we listen to the song once, kind of check it out, point out parts that we like, parts that we don't like, kind of get a little bit of a game plan as to how the analysis is gonna go. And then after that's done, I'm gonna go in depth into certain sections, right? And try to see if I can get some truth out of it, something important, some good information for y'all to consume and have and learn a little bit about music with me through the vision of Daisuke Ishiwatari. So without further ado, I don't want to like delay it too much. Let's go ahead and listen to Testament's theme. Very long name, Like a Weed, naturally, as a matter of course.
Oh, she flies through the cloud, darkness, rather than the breathless.
So there's a lot of different keys, right? And by that I mean that like each section is like in a different key, has a different set of notes, has a different set of chords, right? So they sound distinctly different from each other. Even if like D minor and E minor are both minor keys, or like whatever and whatever are both major keys. I think there were 2 major keys as well. Kind of an interesting situation there, right? When we were talking about Happy Chaos, we were talking about all of these modes, but they were all centered around D. They were all like different modes of D. So still different keys, but a little bit of a flipped sort of way. I wonder if there was like a little bit of an intention there, right? Of like kind of like doing the same thing but backwards. Outside of that, I think it would be good to like, you know, look at the lyrics, which we'll probably do in just a second, to kind of figure out, you know, whether there's like any sort of meaning that we should take here. I mean, there's a lot of things that I understand about Testament and the new iteration of Strive, right? Testament went from being a villain, right? Kind of a bad character, and turned into a good, well, maybe more like neutral sort of character, right? It seems like Testament's intentions are a little bit more like relaxed, right? Like they've just kind of been chilling, acquiring 45 million hobbies apparently, right? Like drinking tea and building figurines like Gunplas. So maybe there is like this sort of theme of like going from turmoil and from this desire to protect Dizzy, maybe in a little bit of a toxic way, to a state of serenity, maybe. It seems like they're just kind of doing their own thing, which is like really cool, right? Good for them. So if we look at the lyrics, which I do have pulled up over here, it's not evil or sacred, it's just life. He just doesn't, you see there's the first pronoun right there, he just doesn't defy the gravity of something. Sustenance and respect it. Sustenance, oh my gosh. It's confusing with the call and response because I'm not really sure what they're trying to say, but she doesn't need a name to distinguish him. I wonder if like she and he, right, these 2 characters that they're talking about, who are definitely not Testament, I think Testament has been confirmed to have they them pronouns, and the them does pop up like later, right? She just tells them he's there without whispering. He believes she's one of a chain, right? And they keep going into this idea of like being one of a chain, perhaps a reference to like being a gear, right? Dizzy was a gear, Kai is not, I believe, right? But Kai and Dizzy are together. It seems to me from the lyrics that there's like maybe this idea of perhaps like Testament giving up like overprotection of Dizzy and kind of starting to trust Kai, right? And Kai is taking on Dizzy, they're gonna start a life together, right? And, you know, Testament is just saying like, okay, well, that's fine, in a little bit of like a big victorious way, because perhaps like what Testament needed in order to like gain calm and like understand themselves a little bit better was like not feel like they had to protect dizzy all the time. I don't know. These are just conjectures. I'm not a Guilty Gear lore expert. You can ask Wooly Versus or something like that. Or, you know, please shoot your interpretations in the comments. I feel like the lyrics here have a lot to like interpret. And I've heard a lot of people saying that like she and he are Dizzy and Kai. I've heard a lot of people saying that he was Cliff, right? There's a lot of different interpretations, which I think is like really fun to like sift through and like kind of figure out. So if you have something to say, please let me know in the comments. But anyway, let's look at the music. And I want to see what's going on at that beginning, right? Because like the thrash parts have a little bit of like different facets to them that I think blow by really quickly without noticing, right? And kind of already implying the idea that we're going to be switching between keys a lot, right? So we start the song off, we're in here. Definitely like a D situation. Still D. That's a great transition. Oh, that's cool. So D, C sharp, D, E, and then they start going back down to C, right? Which is weird. They had the C and the C sharp there, but they have that as a little bit of a chromatic passing to C, C sharp, D, down to A. And this is interesting because that A should be setting you back up for D minor, right? Like that A is the 5 of D, so it would like bring you back there, but it doesn't. No. Brings you to G, right? Which is kind of a weird place. Or I actually think it's G minor. But they spend like 2 seconds on that G minor and then they go straight to E minor. So you see, it feels like a big pronounced change right there, right? Like going dun, 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 dun. Yeah, it kind of comes out of nowhere, that E, but it sounds really cool. Which, by the way, I should say, if you don't know much about like metal guitar, it's very common to like have an open string and be palm muting it as you're playing different notes for like these metal riffs, right? That's why I don't really talk about chords that much and I talk more about keys when I talk about metal. But they're doing two very common sort of like open string situations here, right? Like if you have an open E, that's the lowest string on the guitar, and that makes a lot of sense. And then if you're in D, right, that usually refers to a guitar being like drop D. I don't think that they were like in drop D and then brought it back to standard, but anyway, that's one thing to point out right there. All in all, these sections, right, like these verses and the intro and all this stuff, there's nothing too flashy or too crazy about it. It's just kind of like standard run-of-the-mill thrash, and that doesn't make it bad. Daisuke is really good at writing a thrash riff, right? And they're doing a very common trope of thrash, which is like start with this riff and then do another riff and then do another riff and then go to the vocals, right? To like serve a lot of riffs to kind of keep that excitement going. And the fact that they're serving those riffs while changing keys for each one makes it even more interesting, right? So not a lot to say there, but you know, interesting thing to like keep in mind. And it works, right? Which is the most important part when you're writing a song. This is weird. It's very normal, but it's weird, right? So like, let's talk about this section. It's like your intro and verse, right? You got pretty simple things, right? You got a very pronounced thrash metal style, right? In that sort of category, you have multiple riffs before the vocals, and then the guitar rides on E, D, and G, which is cool. There's a lot of different places to like go. Usually when you listen to like a thrash metal song, you're usually sticking to like one note that's going to be like your writing note, right? So for example, when you listen to Slayer's guitars were tuned a half step down, so it was always an E flat down below, E flat down below, E flat down below, right? Sometimes other bands will like go to the A string instead of the E string to kind of switch it up a little bit. If you think maybe like Megadeth, Tornado of Souls, that's riding on a B, and they're actually pressing that B instead of using that open string, which makes that song a little bit harder to play because you can't rely on like that open string. But here they're hitting 3 different places in the same place, kind of making a statement like, hey, we're going to be switching a lot of keys, and then they do a very weird key change right here, right? This section opts for a completely different style. We still have like kind of like that same rhythm and that same sort of idea, so we were seeing like the verses, but over a very kind of ornate, very beautiful, very beautifully put together sort of major chord progression. It seems to me like it's in A flat, right? She believes that she's one of a chain, right? And that melody is like so traditional, right? Like it almost feels like a national anthem or something. It's funny. It's cute. I like that. So it's an A flat major, and let's try to figure out what chords are going on here, because it seems to me like it's not just your run-of-the-mill sort of chord progression. It's like it goes outside of the key too much, maybe one chord or something like that. Sounded to me like they were starting with the 4 chord, so D flat major. Yeah. Oh, okay. Oh, that's nice. So I want to figure out the chords in this section. So you got the 4 chord of A flat major. Oh, chief. Da, 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 rather than. Oh, that's beautiful. The 3rd of that C minor is E flat, right? And that's the melody note that they're switching to, right? So it's a very beautiful change, very like traditional way of writing a chord progression, and just very based on the melodies, and the melody being very based on the chord tones, right? But then they start kind of flipping it up. This is the thing that was like kind of throwing me off. It's that you had that C minor. Oh, so you know why I was thrown out is because the bass note right there is an A, which if you understand anything about A flat major does not have an A, but there's an A right there, right? But they're not playing an A major chord, right? Rather than doesn't sound right, right? And if I play like an A minor rather than da 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 da, that's getting like closer, but this E is very outside, right? It's more rather than. Oh, that's pretty. I like that. Okay, that is so nice. Step outside of like Roman numerals for a second, right? So we got a D flat major. And then that D flat major, after a while, moves on to a C minor. And that C minor is just like, you know, the 3 chord of A flat major. The 3 chord is a minor chord. The 4 chord D flat is a major chord. So it's all par for the chord so far. But then we got this little guy right here, which I'm going to call an A diminished chord, right? And we haven't like really encountered too many diminished chords. I mean, maybe for like a second, but we have like a fully diminished 7 chord right here. A chord that doesn't happen inside of the major scale. It's not stolen from any place of the major scale, but it's very common to use as a passing chord, right? So one thing that you might notice, if I have this D flat major, oh, she flat, da, 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 rather than da. Oh yeah, that's beautiful. So you got your C minor rather than the. Dun, 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 dun. That is so nice. Okay, so it's going to B flat minor. This is like, B flat minor is going to be like our target chord here. So this is a very traditional use of a diminished chord, because you have this diminished chord A, which is a half step below the B flat, and it's almost like it's walking you there, right? And you might not see a connection between the C minor and the A diminished, but there actually is a very deep connection between the two for the reasons that I'm going to get into in just a second. So anyway, you got your D flat major, and then you got your C minor. And I want you to notice that when I go from C minor to A diminished, all I'm doing is grabbing that G and making it G flat and changing the bass to A, obviously. Right? And then that brings me to my... Oh, actually that's like a sus4 replaces the 3rd of the B flat minor for E flat to mimic the melody the same way that we were looking at before. Of the world, so da, 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 right? You got those 2 melody notes inside of the chords kind of following along, making it feel very ornate, very big, very special, right? So the A walks you to the B flat with those like bass notes, right? But A diminished 7, let me talk to you a little bit about the diminished chord, because I found it very fascinating. So like a fully diminished chord has a particularity that there's only 3 of them, right? For all of the chords in our music, there's 12 of them. But with diminished chords, every chord tone of a diminished chord forms the same diminished chord. Now, that might sound a little bit confusing, but I'm going to spell out an A diminished 7 right here, right? That's going to be A, C, E flat, and G flat, right? The thing about this is that a C fully diminished chord is C, E flat, G flat, and A. And then E flat diminished chord is E flat, G flat, A, and C, right? Like they're all the same chord. So in reality, you only have 3 fully diminished chords. You have C fully diminished, C sharp fully diminished, and D fully diminished. This is the only chord in music that does this, right? And it makes it very special because you can use it in a lot of different places by changing the bass notes to create these little transitions, right? So before, when we were looking at the situation that was happening in this chorus, right? Then you understand that there is like kind of like a cool little like movement situation, a passing diminished chord sort of situation going where the bass is enclosing the target. Again, B flat minor is our target. C to A to B flat. You see how pleasing that sounds? Because you go above the target, below the target, and then to the target, right? But then the voice leading on the right hand has this beautiful thing where all of the chords are so close together, right? You have a C minor, and then you move the G to G flat, and that brings you to the B flat minor, but only it's not B flat minor, it's actually B flat sus4 into B flat minor, right? So I'm going to play all of that because I think it sounds really pretty. You have this, then the bass goes down, the G goes to G flat. Then we stay on the E flat over here to hit my sus4 back here, right? Beautiful chord movement right there. I think it like really helps accompany the melody because it is relying very heavily on like the melody notes to write these chords. And I also think that it has just a very ornate feel because of that, right? Especially because of the use of the diminished chord, right? Like diminished chords have this very like kind of traditional sound to them because they kind of walk you from this chord to the other. It's kind of like making a big deal out of moving from this chord to this chord. Let me get in like a limousine, the diminished limousine till I get over here. That's the way that I like to think of a passing diminished chord. Anyway, the rest of the chords, I don't think anything too crazy is happening. I think they're just going from 5 to 1. There's a D flat. Here's a C minor. C diminished. It's so pretty. Yeah, from what I'm hearing right now, I think they're just going from the 7 chord to the 1, 7 chord to the 1, which is the same as going from the 5 chord to the 1. Dun, 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 dun. And then they do the 2 chord, I think. She believes that she's part of a chain. That's so cheesy. I love it. It's a 2-5-1, right? At the end of the chorus. What is this? G diminished, which is actually part of the key. The 7 chord of the key. So you got G diminished going to A flat major. And then that like repeats. G diminished going to A flat major. And then you got a nice, pretty 2-5-1. You got your B flat minor to E flat major. I don't think they even play the dominant chord. Back to the 1, which is A flat, right? So you got bam, bam, da, da, dum, dun, 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 dun. And then you got 2 to the 5, back to 1. And when you don't have like that metal sort of like backing instrumental, it sounds so silly. But I think that because you have that like thrash sort of interest, but also is very like kind of regal, very like traditional chord progression, then it just kind of works. It just ends up being this like almost silly, almost tongue-in-cheek, but also feels important sort of situation. It's very pretty. I think they did a good job. Let's see if we can like play along with that. Oh, rather than the breathless vastness of the world. Here we go. G diminished to A flat, and G diminished to A flat, E flat minor, E flat to the 1. Again, it's not a very complex song, but it does have a lot of different keys, which kind of creates a weird situation. I mean, one thing that I didn't talk about is that going from E minor to A flat major, those chords have very, very little to do with each other, actually. Like, if you go from this... kind of sounds like we're in like a different song, right? But it doesn't feel weird. I think that like the big like sonic break, like taking out the instruments and just oh she fly, like that really sets you up for like, okay, we're in a different key now. And again, I think that like the fact that they were switching keys so much at the beginning kind of like sets you up for like, okay, we're going to be moving around a lot in this one, right? All right, let's keep listening. There's one more section that I want to talk about, that like pre-chorus that was going on right there. We can talk about the solo. It's essentially the same information. I guess you can't trust the gentle tiger, Jesus. I'm obsessed with the way that Naoto pronounced ubiquity. Ubiquity. Oh, here we go. This section is great. Call it something like a pre-chorus would be like a accurate thing. And it has this particularity of being like very, very like if the chorus felt like kind of like marching, kind of ornate, this one's like big, important. One thing that I noted about those melodies, right, is that like you got a low voice that starts it, and then Naoto in his normal register like kind of does a canon on it for a second, right? It's like boom, bum, bum, boom, bum, bum. Kind of has to have bouncy sort of like march effect of it. For the rustling, right? For the rustling. Kind of sets up that sort of situation. And I mean, interestingly enough, this is probably like a given at this point, but this is also in a different key. This is not an E minor, it's not in D minor, it's not in G minor, and it's not in A flat major. Let's see what key it's in. Oh, Origin's an F major, which again, E minor has nothing to do with F major. It's kind of like another weird random key change, but that works pretty well. Key change is very strange because you usually don't see a lot of key changes that go from a minor to a major key a half step up, right? Like F is one half step above E. And yeah, I mean, that's bizarre. We got an F major sort of situation right here. They're very similar keys, but then, I mean, I guess E minor has an F sharp, so that's like one thing to like keep in mind there. Let's see what the chord progression is doing here. Oh no, it starts with G. Okay, so we got the 2 chord G minor going into the 5, which we saw 2-5 at the end of the chorus before, right? The 2-5 chord progression, we've talked about it before in like countless videos, but I mean, it was happening in the Happy Chaos one, so if you want to check that out in one of these corners, it was happening, I'm pretty sure it was happening in the Perfection Can't Please Me, so you could probably check that out in one of these corners. It just happens all over the place, and it's this very chord progression where, again, 2 goes down a 5th to 5, 5 goes down a 5th to 1. You have that perfect circular motion referring to the circle of fifths, and this is very pleasing to like listen to, right? But that's not what it's doing, right? That's what you would expect the 2-5 to do, is to go back to 1, which would be at F major. Oh, let me test something. So you got G minor to the C to the... There it is again. And this is what makes the diminished chord so versatile, right? Despite the fact that A flat major and F major are completely different keys, they were able to use the same diminished passing chord right here, A diminished 7. And I think that A diminished 7 is taking you to D major? Huh. So what's D major in the key of F? Okay, so if you have D major, D minor is usually the 6th chord of F. D major, or D dominant if you wanted to look at it like that, I think that's the 5 of G, right? The 5 of 2. Yeah. Something's throwing me off. Is it going to B flat? Oh, it goes to B flat major, the 4 chord in the key of F. The 4 chord and the 2 chord are virtually the same chord, right? A G minor chord is G, B flat, and D. A B flat major chord is B flat, D, and F. So you see they share 2 notes together. So going from the 5 of 2 to B flat instead is not too far of a stretch. I think like works perfectly fine. But I think from that 4, they're going 4, 5, 6, 2 to the 5. And then they don't resolve to 1 because, I mean, why would they? So B flat, we walk up to the 5, which is C. We walk up to the D minor, which is 6. So you see this time they do the 6th chord the way that it's supposed to do it, instead of being a secondary dominant that brings you to the 2. And then finally they go to the back to C and they stay there. this is so interesting to me because despite the fact that this section is in F major, it never actually resolves to the F major. Dun, 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 dun. Oh, there's the F. Okay, I see. So after the 6, they do go all the way up to the 1, and then they bring that to the C and C. And, you know, they just stay on C for a little bit, pause, and then go to the last chorus, right? But just like kind of walk you through it. G minor to C is a 2-5 that should resolve to F. It doesn't. It goes to that A diminished 7th that we looked at up in the chorus, right? Completely different keys, but they're able to use the same chord in order to create like a passing sort of effect between two chords. And that this A diminished chord in particular goes to D major, or D dominant would be a better way of looking at it. That D dominant is not an F major, but it's 5 of 2, the 5 of G minor. It resolves to B flat instead, but G minor and B flat are almost the same chord, right? So it makes sense. And then that B flat, the 4, sets up a little bit of a walk up. We go from B flat to C to D to F, right? So 4, 5, 6, 1. And then after we finally get that resolution to 1, we go right back down to 5 to that very tense chord. Boom, right? And it leaves it kind of in limbo, but then it resolves back to oh, she fly, da, 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 da. And it goes back to the chorus, which is in a completely different key. So there's no connection there, but it kind of works, right? Let's see if I can play along with that, because this is kind of a thick section. All right, G minor to the C, to the A diminished, to the D, the 5 of 2, but we go to 4 instead, then 5, then 6, then 1 to the 5. You know, again, I keep saying there's not a lot to talk about with this song, but they did put together some really beautiful chord progressions, so I kind of show a little bit of different sides of Testament, right? And maybe like a little bit of a liberation sort of feeling there. I do think that like the sounds of like Les Miserables and like those sort of like kind of like French Revolution sort of things do have this sound of like being freed from something, and that paired with lyrics kind of has like this effect of, you know, creating a nice feeling of like, oh, independence in some sort of way. But yeah, I think that like there's 2 major keys, 2 different minor keys, maybe 3, but the G minor doesn't happen for enough time for me to like talk about it like that. But the song starts in D minor, then moves to E minor, then modulates to A flat major. They don't have anything to do with each other. By the way, D minor and E minor don't have anything to do with each other either. And then in the pre-chorus of the second chorus, they go to F major, which also doesn't have anything to do with any of these keys. And it creates this sort of like very disorienting thing, but the fact that like the major chord progressions are so like thoroughly put together, like they are very, I don't want to say classical because it's not really classical, but they sound like very traditional music, right? Like, and they have this like kind of like victorious sound to them that I think like kind of contributes to that feeling of independence that like that Testament acquired through maybe like letting go of Dizzy, right? Which is what I think the song lyrics are referring to. And it shows you a Testament that's like a little bit more empowered, and almost like that ending, right? Like having that ending that's very quiet, that we'll listen to it on the final listen through, which we're gonna do right now, kind of gives you that sort of like, oh wow, like maybe the less like I am free, independence kind of side of it, and more the emotional like, wow, like this peace, this internal peace and serenity. Anyway, that might be a little bit of a stretch, but seems like close enough for me. I want to listen to the song one more time and like wrap it up right here. We looked at the verses, the intro, we looked at the pre-chorus, we looked at the chorus, and I think we squeezed out as much as we could, right? Because this one's like definitely like less convoluted than some of the other songs and has like less sections. So let's give a final listen to Like a Weed, Naturally as a Matter of Course, Daisuke Ishiwatari, Testament's theme, last theme of the season. Hey, maybe after this we'll like put the new songs in the ranking, and that, you know, that big video that I have where everyone's really mad about the fact that I don't like Axel's theme. And yeah, maybe we'll like stack them up there. Let's listen to it. I love that I just like slapped you right away, right into the crash. And again, this situation is in D minor. It sounds kind of silly on the piano, but it is. Right.
It's not
That's so weird, the fact that they go to G minor for a second and then they trick you and they go to E minor. Again, very standard thrash riffs, right? Full offs and like random little notes between the open string. Ubiquity, my favorite part of the song. And here we modulate to A flat with the 4 chord. And then we go to C minor, A diminished, B flat minor, right? 7 to the 1, 7 to the 1. Then I think it's 2 to the 5 and back to 1. It's almost like silly, like how kind of like perfectly put together that chord progression is. Like it's just like, I kind of want to steal it for something like just some sort of like really ornate sort of instrumental. So you do change the little chord hits here, but I don't think it's anything like too substantial. His voice performance is so funny in this song. It's so funny. Yeah, nothing to write home about, but then we do have this section in F major that I really liked a lot. Kind of throws you off. Here we got B flat major, C, B minor, to the F, to the C, and that's a 5. That kind of keeps you hanging. And you're hanging, and you go to the D flat. Back to the chords. To the C minor, to the A diminished, the B flat minor. 7 to 1, 7 to 1. And again, R2 to the 5. Oh, a little bit of a different ending there actually. Probably to set up to go into a solo. Hey, Play the Hero is a great song. I do insist, like, I'm not going too hard into it because it's like a very simple minor skill over a minor key sort of solo. But this is one of my favorite solos on the soundtrack so far. It's short and sweet, but it does everything it needs to do. I particularly like, I'm sorry, I don't mean to pause and like go back to it, but I really like the part where they start sweeping, and instead of keeping a beat, the drums start just playing like a huge fill. Here. Oh, I guess that's part of that section, but that's amazing. It's such a like a long, it's like a 4-bar drum fill while they're kind of doing like all these like sweep picking things. It's amazing.
Oh, he flies through the crowd.
Last chorus doesn't develop too much in terms of harmony, but you see, Naoto goes higher in register to like kind of keep it interesting. And then it repeats, right? So that's another development. You see, it just kind of like overlaps the repeat right there. Very beautiful ending. Without having to do any of like Daisuke's weird like sections, like bridges. Oh, that's a nice fake ending right there. Probably not worth looking into, but they did do like some nice chord changes to set up that longer ending there. I think this ending does so much for the song. The string sounds so beautiful, and it's like, I don't know, there's something about it that has a lot of personality, and they keep going for like 6 seconds longer, right? I mean, what else is there to say, right? The song doesn't have too much to it, just verse, chorus, pre-chorus, solo kind of situation. I think its main defining characteristic is how many times it switches keys. I think it's a very beautiful song. I think perhaps the contrast between like the very heavy metal and the kind of like maybe like Les Mis sort of like major keys that sound very victorious, like almost like a French Revolution sort of deal. It's kind of alluding to Testament's like state as a villain sort of, versus Testament's like kind of new gained state of serenity, right? Like being independent. I'm like reading it like politically, but I mean independence in terms of like freedom from like the shackles of feeling like you have to overprotect Dizzy, for example, and like, you know, and just being able to like acquire 30 million hobbies and just do your own thing and live your non-binary life in whatever way you want to live it. I don't know exactly where Testament lives. I think it's like some hut, right? Like in the middle of wherever, building like models and drinking tea and like watching wrestling. Was wrestling one of the hobbies? Anyway, thank you so much for watching. I think that was a wonderful theme. I'm excited to like maybe look at everything in season 1 and maybe rank it, maybe put it in the old ranking, maybe create a little bit of the situation there, maybe do some revisions, because I mean my mind has changed a little bit on some of those songs. I still think Axel's theme is really bad, so don't try to like dissuade me from that. But anyway, if you like this stuff, if you watch this far, I know these videos are pretty long, but if you've been interested enough to like be around, hit the like, hit the subscribe button, make sure you're informed for like the next video. I know I took a very long time to do this one. I am sorry about that. It's been kind of turbulent with moving in and, you know, setting up the new room and like do all of this, but I do appreciate your patience, and I will see you next time. Take care.